Hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Scannell Agenda. This is show number 12, and the date is March 7th, 2014. And we are here at the Cape Cod Community Media Center, great facility, here on 17 Shad Hole Road in Dennis. Down near all the bridge construction now that hopefully will be winding up soon, as spring is right around the corner. I have a few things to discuss today. I want to get into my Sunday school program. I want to get into a magazine I read on a regular basis. That's Wooden Boat Magazine. And I bought a book at the secondhand bookstore. I'll get into that. So here's a book I bought called Lobstering, Inshore and Offshore by Earl Doliber. I think that's pronunciation, I'm not sure. And it's a 1973, published by International Marine. It's a nice book about lobstering inshore and offshore. But if you buy a book like this, you'll really get a flavor for how things were. This was right around the time when Jerry Studs was helping to kick out the foreigners, the Russians offshore fishing. And that's probably just when I was starting to get into the fisheries back then. Made my first trip offshore, got seasick when I was 14. That was offshore lobstering. I used to hang around at Saquatucket Harbor when I was a kid, helping out, doing what I could to help the fishermen carry things, and, I'd swim under and unfoul the propellers for all the fishermen there. I'd just go down the line and, bring my knife and just cut the, it was lobster pot warps mostly that they'd run over, heading out to the grounds and back. Someone needed to send some kid up somewhere where they couldn't get and do something, I got sent up in there. Just generally trying to be kind of a learner at that age, listening to all the fishermen talk. But the reason I bring this up is here it is on page 60. I'll just read you a paragraph. Lobstermen are further disturbed by the rag pickers' apparent lack of concern for the conservation of the fishing grounds. For years, professional lobstermen have avoided fishing the harbor regions where they believe lobsters commonly stay during molting and breeding seasons. In effect, this provided a closed and protected breeding ground for the lobsters. Many part-time fishermen have no qualms about fishing the harbors, and while exact damage, if any, cannot be estimated, most professional lobstermen resent the practice and feel it has further reduced their catch. This is more of the same general resentment. It's varnished over quite well, but it's been around since forever. Fishermen kind of territorial, there are stories about that. So before we formed up this limited entry based system, these were all these traditions of hierarchies among the fishermen were very accepted by most people. But I never did accept them. I always thought that if you're a fisherman, and here they refer to the part-time lobstermen of Marblehead. This is a book about Marblehead inshore fishing, which is reflective of a lot of inshore fisheries, lobster fisheries. At that time. But the resentment, what was I going to say? The resentment about part-time fishermen. I never had that. I think it's because my dad was not a Cape Codder, and he was resented for a lot of his work that he did. Say in planning, he worked in planning and rezoned, was kind of behind rezoning, chairman of the planning board. This was back when Cape Cod had no zoning, and there were fights, of course, you know. Provincialism, I never liked it because, you know, I could see how it affected him, and even I was resented possibly by some, you know, real Cape Codders, the real thing, you know, been here for forever. Of course, this was back in the, let's say, late 60s, early 70s when I was growing up. I could feel that kind of thing. Those were good days to grow up too, because people would be honest. They'd talk honestly. Oh, Scannell, what kind of name is that? You know, so you'd tell them it's Irish, and they'd say, oh, you better be careful. You know, you probably could be an alcoholic if you're not really careful. So I always try to follow that advice to be very careful. But the provincialism with the commercial fishing as an accepted tradition got us into, I guess this is why I'm bringing this up, got us into this silly program of limited entry, which favored the certain few fishermen who happened to be positioned in the hierarchy of fishermen at that time, okay? Like they weren't the rag pickers. I've never, you know, before I read that book, I'd never heard rag picker. I guess that's a north of Boston type of term, but I'm not sure. So, you know, the reasoning to me that's proper is that, you know, all fishermen deserve a certain amount of respect, and all fishermen have the rights to the resources. You know, just because you've been fishing forever doesn't mean you have more rights than someone else. That's my feeling. And now growing up, a lot of fishermen felt a lot differently. And so we ended up. That's how we ended up. I wanted to explain that you know, these lesser fishermen could be easily just walked right over. And the future fishermen could be just disregarded. Because, you know, if you're into worshiping fishermen the way we used to and the way we do now with all these systems of special patronage rights for a certain few fishermen, that to me, it always was just plain, you know, wrong-headed. I got a little pin here. It says, "Media reform begins with me." This is my fly fisherman's jacket that I got at the Truro swap years ago. And over here I've got this little thing that says Stephen J. Scannell. I've since changed my name to Stephen J. F. Scannell so that operating on Facebook or on the computer generally, Stephen J. F. Scannell is very much more of an individual than Stephen J. There are a lot of them. So I wanted to try to correct that problem for the sake of the others, you know. So I had when I was younger, I moved out of Harwich, and there was a guy that was Stephen something, I forget his middle initial, but he moved into Harwich and he lived in South Harwich with my name. He had my name, but coincidental. Stephen Scannell. I forgot his middle initial, but I was getting his mail. And then a couple of years ago, I got a call from some creditor. He probably gets more calls from my creditors. Anyway, and then I moved into Yarmouth, and then I find he moved into Yarmouth. I found that out somehow. And then Nantucket, I got a bill for this other guy with my same name, coincidental. on Nantucket for a broken ankle or something like that. So that's why I did that. I think it's kind of weird to change your name generally, but I was raised Catholic, and I went to you know, all that Catholic school. I'll get into all this stuff here when I talk about Sunday school. But anyway, Francis was my confirmation name. St. Francis of Assisi was my saint. So I tacked that on there. It cost me about $250 to do that. But, so I did that. So I'm reading this. I'm almost done with this book about lobstering. Pretty good book. I want to mention something about myself and a lot of other people here on the Cape love boats, you know. And so this is Wooden Boat Magazine. And I've been into that for many years. It just keeps my mind working properly to get into and stay into these, you know, boat building methods, boat designs. I found over the years in my windmill designs, and I knew this would happen. I knew when I was getting into windmill designs that the boat angle, let's say, that would be big, because boats are pretty complex, and windmills are pretty complex. So if you're good at one, you might be, you know, it makes things easy to be good at the other. Years ago, I was reading a book about the old-fashioned windmills on the Cape. And a windmill would be run most likely by a retired seafarer. And for the reason because a seafarer was good at knowing the weather and playing the weather. And of course, your windmills back then presented canvas to the wind to generate horsepower, to drive the gears, to run the grist mill, what have you, to grind the corn. So they found that there was quite a parallel, and I think it is true. So I do believe if we're ever going to come away with solving this energy crisis, especially using the tripe system and the Georges Bank mega mills and all the stuff I've come up with, well, I believe that your boatyard men, boat builders, yacht racers and designers, they would be critical to being on the team of people to design the windmills. And especially the windmills that I designed, the Georges Bank mega mills. They're intensely complex with the rigging and very much all tied together. So you'd want boat builders to get in there, and yacht racers like Dennis Connor's, I guess, famous yacht racer with the America's Cup and all. And I read something very interesting by him that changed the way I design things. He said, if you're not busting something up, basically, if you don't break the gear once in a while, then you've overbuilt the gear. Think about that. I said, whoa, really? So anyway, Wooden Boat Magazine, for me, has kept my mind trained. So I'd like to thank Wooden Boat. And of course, it's just an enjoyable thing, too, if you're into that kind of thing. So boat building and windmills. I think the two are really like the chocolate and peanut butter. Once in a while I say that. And they really go together. Peanut butter and jelly. So I would like to ask that your local boatyard guys, boat builders, fishermen, aquaculture people, get together on some of the things I'm working on, have a look at it, such as the tripe system and all the rigging with the Georges Bank mega mills. And I've got stacks of drawings of all this stuff. So these are all detailed drawings from which to get a start from. You know, how would you do it? You know, this is common in boatyards. If you're trying to fix something, you might have a few guys around at coffee break talking about how to fix something or what would they do about some problem. So problem solvers in the marine trades, designers, those are all the guys that might be very much key to solving the energy crisis. And your ivory tower professors, maybe not so much. That's just a guess. Here's something I wanted to get into. This is a 4th grade Sunday school book, and it's called This Is Our Faith. This goes back to when I was a Sunday school teacher. I did mention, since I'm going to get into the drugs, I can't stand this drug issue, because I'm a druggie. That's why. And if you have any self-hatred for your failures as a druggie, you'd probably find getting into these drug issues to be much more difficult, personally. Much more of a hurdle. So anyway, the morality thing about the drugs. I had a program which was going pretty good until I went public with it and went to town meeting and tried to bump it up. But the program was, I called it the Village Idiot Anti-Tobacco Company. Well, anyway, that was part of the program, but the kids didn't get much of that. All the kids got was the basics of the international problems that the world was having with the tobacco companies. And at this point in time, in the mid to early 90s, you're probably aware that there was a big push way back then to somehow put tobacco to bed, but that never happened. What we ended up getting was some kind of a ridiculous settlement, which even today isn't not working out, and there's a lot of corruption surrounded by that issue with the tobacco. But what we don't really concentrate on here in America is that America, United States of America, looked the other way while our tobacco companies were being the merchants of death worldwide. In other words, there was a huge push by our own tobacco companies, our American companies. Well, they're not ours, they're just companies. I know that, but so I worked on this project, and this was an economics project, and I just want to give you a little idea of how I think. I come up with a lot of ideas. How I think is this: if there's some kind of an international problem, what I will do will be to say, in my mind or on paper, I'll scale it down. So I did that with the tobacco problem. I scaled it way down to a local Nantucket issue only. And that eliminates a lot of complexity. It's like algebra. You scale it down, simplify. Okay. And then I came up with, all right, so let's say there were 5 or 6 tobacco companies just on Nantucket. And now I had to go to a town meeting and put something on the table, me, which is different than, hey, what are we all going to do? That's totally different mindset. So I came up with starting a company, a tobacco company, that would be basically like an anti-missile missile. It would go after the other companies. It would grab their market share. So in working on that, I came up with a 4-part approach to actually solving the problem, and not like coming up with a settlement. That's like party hack stuff. That isn't going to solve the problem. It's something, but what is it? It's not much. And the lawyers made out pretty well. Back then they made $250 million. These, lawyers. I don't know why we hire a Congress if they're going to be, farming out all the jobs there. So the first part of this Village Idiot program that I had was, number one, get the kids on the same page with economics and with the smokers, if possible. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, that's kind of oddball. Who thinks like this? Well, your smokers at home, they may be your mother or father, your aunt or uncle. You don't want a program that's going to disparage them, because I think they tried that a little earlier. Before my program, there was it was a butthead. Don't be a butthead, okay? So that was disparaging. So that was kind of smearing all the smokers as buttheads. You know, and so that got laid to rest. That really didn't work. But my program was targeted on me, and there would be a cartoon the kids would draw, which would be just a cartoon face. I had a crew cut and a huge beard, like a 5-year-old growth of a beard. And the kids would draw that, and the top of the poster would say, "Don't be the village idiot." And then the bottom would say, "He started smoking at age 31," which was all true. I don't want to get into that. That's embarrassing. I will if somebody asks me, but luckily there's no one sitting here. All right. So then there'd be a circle and a slash, and there's a village idiot there. That's a cartoon a 4th grader can draw. Now their job was, of course, to do the homework first. You know, get the homework done. This was kind of a little bit of a part-time project for the kids after they got all their lessons done, which was very important. That was the most important thing. And then they would ask, you know, why would someone start smoking at age 31? That was their job, to go and talk about this, get the talk going with the, 10-year-old kids. Talk to your aunts, your friends, your mother, your father. Talk to them, even if they smoked. That was the important thing. So I think it worked. So that was a kids program. That was the first part of the program. The second part of this economics project. Oh, and I should mention too, the kids also got a big dose of the Reader's Digest article, which was The Merchants of Death, and I forgot the date of that article, but we went through that, picked it over with a fine-tooth comb. So that was pretty important to get the kids on this page of international economics, and the kids would also go up to the blackboard and talk about how much money they would spend if they opened up in their chapter of their life, the tobacco. And so it was also a marijuana program, and I told them about my story. What about their grandparents? How would they like it if somebody smoking grass and ran a stop sign and all that? And these kids were definitely very bright and very honest about that whole deal there. And I had a hat, which was a little cap, and it said, "Smartest man in the world." I kept getting them stolen. I don't know how they went up missing. Someone kept stealing those hats. But when I had those hats and the kids would get the option, well, you can either draw the cartoon of the village idiot, or you can draw the cartoon of the smartest man in the world. And these kids would look at each other. These 10-year-old kids are funny. So that kind of gave them the green light, to draw up the village idiot. And a lot of those posters were finally ending up in the public schools, and it could have been a good program. But I think the party hacks didn't like it, because the second, third, and fourth part of it was not to their traditional ways. The second part of this program was to actually, for me, to start a tobacco company, the Village Idiot Anti-Tobacco Tobacco Company, and then go after market share with several different sub-brands. And this would all be, funded by people who wanted to put the cigarettes to bed, put the whole thing to bed worldwide. And so, okay, the third part of this program would be, once these tobacco companies start looking at their market share dwindling, Well, then, what they're going to say is, we're going to look at the writing on the wall here, and we're going to say, hey, if we're a tobacco company, this, village idiot, he's gaining market share. This company is a predatory company. All these people, the groundswell is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and these people want this tobacco business behind us. We do. I know we do. And so this would be the mechanism. So it's economics. It's an economics program for the world. Now, bear in mind, this was many years ago that I did this. So I was working on complex systems like this many years ago, but I got punished for this one pretty good at town meeting. A lot of people were insulted by it, and they reacted by, not discussing anything with me, not listening to me, not watching my show at the time, which explained everything in great detail, and they got all half-cocked. And these party hacks wanted to kill this. Both parties, I believe, wanted to kill this idea, because this tobacco for the parties has always been a major cash cow. The tax monies, plus the political money. Okay, so the third part of the thing is that all the countries of the world get together and buy out all the tobacco companies of the world. And you might say, well, that's not going to happen. Well, it could happen, especially if everyone wants to do this, including the tobacco companies. And the fourth and last is this. You control the prices, you control the branding and the nicotine, and so you're not actually engaging in anything too onerous. And you got to consider all the government expenses down the road. These cancer treatments now, we didn't have them back in the 60s. So that's all big money for the cigarettes. So I want to put this idea on the table, but I want to put it on the table in the same context. I would love to teach Sunday school on TV. I never did that, but it would be a different kind of Sunday school. Oh, this book is great. It's got an index of about 2 pages, and it's got a glossary of about 2 pages. It's basic Christianity, but I would want to teach and bring in others and teach different religions. And I'm not really a heavy-duty theologian at all. That would be saying that's an understatement. I was raised with all of this good stuff and go to church and all, but I'm not the religious type. I don't think I am. Anyway, so let's get into that. As they say, the clock is ticking on this stuff. People worldwide are getting hurt by the tobacco. And we here in America should be the ones to take care of this tobacco issue. This was since Sir Walter Raleigh, right? This has been our deal. Let's make it our deal to get behind this 4-part system. Number 1, you get with the kids. Number 2, you have a concentrated effort to grab market share from tobacco companies and let them know what you're doing. That's fine. And that would not be a nonprofit. That would be a for-profit company worldwide. And then number 3, you orchestrate the buyout, the complete buyout of all the tobacco companies. Number 4, you control the nicotine, you control the pricing. You don't do it in a mean-spirited way, but you just exercise a little control, which is what I think we've always wanted to do in a reasonable way. All right, thanks. That's the Scannell agenda. Thank you, Cape Codders, and everyone else, Nantucketers and Vineyarders and everyone in the world. Thank you very much. This is a worldwide project, this Village Idiot project. It is very dear to my heart. And the marijuana goes with it, but I didn't really have time to get into that. As you know, I'm big into that because of my history. Okay, thanks a lot.